As we do on these calls, we want to make sure everybody knows who's on the call. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. The way I see you in the order on my screen might not be the same order on your screen. So there's no particular order here, just the way it appears on my screen. And we do have a number of people that are on the video today. So just if you could just say your name and if you're involved with an organization, what organization that you're with. So we'll start off with Martha. You're up top.
Yes, Martha Lanzalotti, and I'm a member of One Voice.
Great. Anthony Benjavenga.
Hi, I'm Anthony Benjavenga. I'm on the board of One Voice, and I'm also the immediate past president of Unico National.
Okay, great. Tommy Damigella.
Use it, Tommy.
You're muted.
Yep, here I am. Tom Damigella, Vice President of the Italian American Alliance of Massachusetts and President of the North End Historical Society and other things.
Jim Scanelli.
Yeah, hi, Jim Scanelli, past chapter president at Montville Unico, member of the board of directors of Italian American One Voice Coalition, and member of NAGA.
Yep. Great. James, you're up.
I'm Jim Benassi. I'm the president of the Italian American Association of Louisville, Kentucky.
Thank you. Ed McLaughlin.
Yes, Ed McLaughlin, Syracuse, New York, member, board of directors, Columbus Monument Corporation.
All right, right next to Anthony.
Right next to Anthony.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Tony Alacqua, from board member at Columbus Monument Corporation in Syracuse.
Great. Rich Esposito.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rich Esposito from Greater Westfield Unico.
Great. Josephine.
Hi, I'm Josephine Mayetta. I represent the Association of Italian American Educators. I'm also a producer and radio host of Hofstra University Sabato Italiano and so many other organizations, including One Voice Coalition.
That's right. Nick Pirro.
Nick Pirro. I'm the vice president of the Columbus Monument Corporation, first Italian American county executive of Onondaga County. And behind me is the statue of Christopher Columbus, and we're fighting very hard to maintain.
Yes, sir. Okay, Marianne, you're up.
Marianne Schick, Long Island, New York, Sons and Daughters of Italy, and also Commission for Social Justice Liaison.
Thank you. Frank Ferrara.
Frank Ferraro, Friends of Italian Americans.
Robert DiBiase.
With the New Jersey Italian Heritage Commission, I'm the chair emeritus. I'm with the Italian American Task Force, starting commissions across the U.S., and I'm also a board member of One Voice.
Tony Santarelli.
Tony Santarelli, vice president of One Voice.
Tony Andrioli.
Good evening, everybody. Tony Andrioli. I'm president of the Unico DMV chapter.
Thank you. Jerry Carleo.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Jerry Carleo, chairman of the Colorado Italian American Foundation. Hope everybody's doing well.
Thank you. Dr. Ann.
Hi, Ann Walco, a member of the One Voice and also past national president of Unico.
Okay. Maria Recupero.
Hi, Maria Recupero. I am the heritage chair of the Randolph Unico.
Thank you. Bob Tart.
Member of the board of directors of One Voice and a trustee of Unico Foundation, Inc.
Great. Matt Guarneri.
All right. Matthew Guarneri, president of Italian American Defense League in Connecticut.
Thank you. Now, Lisa, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Hopefully, you'll be able to unmute yourself. I'll give you a couple of seconds to try to unmute if you could find that.
Okay.
You got it.
Lisa Cesari from Southbury, Connecticut, from Colombian Lawyers Association and past director of the National Organization of Italian American Women.
Great. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I was actually a little concerned having this the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, but I'm glad to see everybody here.
Right.
And those people that are on the phone, since we can't see you, I'm not going to introduce you, but certainly we welcome all the people that joined by telephone, but you're not on the screen. So I'm not going to be asking you to introduce yourselves. So we have a guest speaker tonight who I've known for a number of years in a number of capacities. One which was very interesting was that my grandparents actually used the bank where he started the Italian American Museum.
Oh.
The corner
That's
of Grand Street
interesting.
in Mulberry.
Stabile.
Banco Stabile. My grandparents were there from Mott Street, and that was their bank.
Oh,
But that's not how I know Dr. Scelza. I know him for a long time, and I'm so pleased he could spend time with us tonight and give us some background on an important issue and then some other back stuff. So, Dr. Joe, welcome to our call, and please go ahead.
Andre, it's a pleasure to be with all of you, and especially pleasure to be with you, who I've known for a very long time. We've been in the trenches for a long time. You've supported a lot of the initiatives that I've been involved with, and I do appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Particularly the lawsuit that I fought in 1992. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm founder and president of the Italian American Museum in New York, but that wasn't my first big challenge in my life. There was a few others, but I'd like to go into those if you don't mind, and just bring everybody up to speed, because a lot of people don't really know the story of what happened. And it's not so much how I arrived where I am today as president of the museum, but what happened along the way. It started with me in the 1970s. And when I was a graduate student at the City University of New York. It was my second master's degree before I went on to do a doctorate at Columbia at Lehman College, and it was in guidance and counseling. But I was
really
asked,
curious to hear
can
your
you hear
take
me?
on Jalen Hurts.
Hold on. We got some background noise. If people could just mute themselves if they got background noise, please.
Can you unmute me again? I can't figure out how to do it.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, Doc, go ahead.
All right. Well, so I was at the City University of New York. I was doing my second master's degree in guidance and counseling. And I was asked to serve on the board of the University Student Senate. University Student Senate is the student governing body for the university, student governing body for the university of 250,000 students. And I was asked first to become a member of the board. Then I became, as many things happen, you take on other positions. I became a vice chairman for graduate affairs, and then I became the vice chairperson for legislative affairs for the University Student Senate in the mid 1970s. As such, I was the only Italian American on that board, and was the only one throughout the whole system. And if you may know that this university is not City College, it's City University. It was that time there were 20 colleges, there are more now, but there were 20 colleges in the university, and I was the only one representing, I was representing Lehman College at the time, and unbeknownst to me, I was representing Italian Americans. Why I say unbeknownst to me? Because what happened was when I got into the position, I started getting complaints from a lot of the students, and they would come to me to try to address those complaints and bring them to the administration about the problems that they were having in the university. The problems that they were having was the lack of courses in Italian and Italian American studies, and a lack of counselors and professors of Italian descent in the university that were able to guide them through the process. Why is this important? Particularly important at that time, because this was the middle 70s, and it was only 5 years after the university had started open admissions. If my video goes out, don't worry about it. Just I'll keep talking anyway.
Okay.
So the university had 1969. There were riots in the city. There were riots in the city, and as a result of it, what the City University did for the first time is they allowed anybody who wanted to go to college to go to college. Well, you know what that meant. They opened the floodgates. Reason why they did it, in my opinion, was because not so much that they wanted to do it, but that they had to do something before the city burnt down. At that time, there were a lot of riots going on in the city, particularly in the African American community, which was very upset with a lot of things going on, and they were taking it out. So from my perspective, one of the appeasement gestures that they did was they had open enrollment, open admissions for the first time, where anybody who wanted to go to college could go to college. Now, a lot of Italian Americans did not go to the City University of New York colleges, partially, I believe, because of the weighted averages that they would get in the parochial high schools. You would get a 75 in a parochial high school was equal to a 95 in a public high school. So you had to have an 85 average in order to be able to get into a City University college, whether it was Queens College, Hunter College, Brooklyn College, whatever. prior to 1970. Well, that all changed. And as a result of it, they opened the floodgates. And by 1975, 1/4 of all the students in the university were Italian American. 1/4. No courses in Italian studies, definitely no courses in Italian American studies, and then also no professors. Now, the worst thing that happened was by 1975, City University went into financial crisis. Some of you may remember the term "big back bonds," and which was sold in order to get the city out of the situation. Well, the important part about that was whether they had to let go a lot of faculty members because of the terrible condition the city was in. At that time, the city paid at least 50% of the university's salaries. So last hired were the first fired. Last hired, first fired. There was a union contract. Well, the young professors that were coming into the system that were Italian American, they were let go. They had no protection. I mean, if they were, the ones who had protection were in quotes, those that were protected by affirmative action. So they were all let go. And some of my good friends, one of them I can tell you, some of you may know the name of Gaetano Cipolla. Gaetano Cipolla was one of those who was let go from Lehman College. There were others as well. And they all went on to have stellar careers other places, but they no longer were at the City University. And the students who wanted to have professors of Italian descent there. Why? Because they had more of an understanding of the students, their mores, their customs, their traditions, the way they acted, what they needed, and they just weren't there. So the students started complaining. They complained and they complained and they complained. And some of the faculty that were let go complained. As a result of it, on December 9th, 1976, with a lot of pressure from the legislature, the City University of New York declared Italian Americans, and I'm holding up the paper, an affirmative action category. Chancellor Robert Kibbe said, "To this end, I am deeming Italian Americans as an affirmative action category for the university in addition to those categories under existing federal statutes and regulations. I also have instructed the affirmative action office to include Italian Americans in their data collection for affirmative action purposes." That's very important. They had to start keeping, and they still to this day keep numbers on the numbers of Italian American faculty there are in the university, which is no place else done, to my knowledge, in the United States. That becomes important later on. But still, with that wonderful decree, nothing changed. Nobody was hired. The horse was already out of the barn, and the students were gone. The faculties were gone. Students were still yelling and complaining. So in 1977, the chairman of the Italian American Caucus in the state of New York was Senator John D. Calandra. The name must be familiar to some of you because you've heard of the Calandra Institute. It wasn't originally called that, but he held a series of hearings at the university. I was the student representative for all of those hearings that were at the university, and he had each one of the college presidents come in and give accounting for how many courses they had for Italian, how many Italian American students they had, how many faculty members they had, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the numbers were woefully low. At that time, the numbers were about the faculty was about 6%. There were very few Italian studies courses, absolutely no Italian American studies courses. So what they did was then in the spring of 78, he had a meeting with all the other legislators, and they decided that there should be an institute formed that would be able to address these issues because the university wasn't doing it. That institute was known as the Italian American Institute to Foster Higher Education. It was established in 1978, actually was funded in 79. I became the first director of counseling. Father Nicholas Russo was the first executive director. I stayed with them for a couple of years, and then I decided it was best for me to go back to Columbia and finish my doctoral studies, which is what I did. In 1984, I go up to Albany, basically advocating for mental health counseling, which I am one of, licensed in the state of New York. I was lobbying for licensure, which also was another story, but we now are licensed in every state. I walk into Senator Calandra's office because he was my state senator. I lived in the Northeast Bronx. And he says to me, he says, Joe, do you want to come back to the Institute? Now, I knew there had been some problems at the Institute, and I wasn't stupid. So I decided that I would go back, but under certain conditions. One, I wanted to be the executive director. And two, it couldn't be something affiliated with the university. It had to be part of the university, because I knew that if you weren't part of it, you really wouldn't get the respect that you needed. He said, okay, I'll call you back. Give me a couple of days. A few days later, I get a call from Chancellor Murphy, who was then the chancellor of the university. He invites me to a meeting. He offers me the position of director of the Italian American Institute at the City University of New York. And from that point on, I become its first director under the university. So at that point, I know my mandate. I know what I'm responsible for. I know that the university is supposed to collect data, and I start asking for the data. Unfortunately, they were very reluctant to come up with the data. So finally, after a number of years, a few years passed, we decided that we would collect the data ourselves and present it to them, which we did. And what they always said was the federal government didn't keep data on Italian American faculty as they did for the affirmative action classes that the federal government collected it for. So we had a monumental task. Fortunately, as Josephine knows, I had a very good friend who's passed away, Dr. Vincenzo Milioni, who we hired to be our demographer, a director of statistics at the institute, and he put together all the information that we needed. Actually, we put together what looked like 3 phone books of information. I'm excited. I go and I present that to the vice chancellor for faculty and staff relations in 1990. And I go in with Dr. Milioni, I go in with Dr. Castiglione. We sit at the desk, we present the data, we say, see, we're underrepresented. You need to get more Italian, you need to hire more Italian American faculty. Well, he looked at the data, he took the book. I want you to see my hands. Took the book, put the book on the side, smiled at me, and didn't say another word. No response whatsoever. At that point, I knew we were going to get nowhere. And I was, to be honest with you, pretty angry. I'd gone through this effort, which seemed like an effort in futility. So what I did was, along with 5 others, including Dr. Milioni and myself, we filed a class action complaint with the United States Department of Labor for discrimination against Italian Americans at the City University of New York. Nobody took that complaint seriously at the university. Nobody actually thought that this Italian Americans discriminated against. Ridiculous. You know, they're so successful. They're everywhere. And we are, but not at the City University. That's the difference. At that place, we did not have the numbers. When you looked at NYU, when you looked at St. John's, when you looked at Seton Hall, looked at these other colleges, you're at about 20% of the faculty, which is where we should be. All right? We were still at a woeful 6 or 5% at the university. Well, they weren't taking it seriously. Finally, we were able to get to Senator D'Amato, who was our United States Senator in New York at the time, and he insisted that the Department of Labor really investigate this complaint. They tried to get the university to comply. They refused to comply. Again, they stonewalled. So what did they do? What did the Department of Labor do? They filed a class action complaint against all 21 campuses of the City University of New York. Class action complaint in place against all the campuses. Well, that kind of got the university angry with me because they saw me as the spark plug that was making it happen. And they were right, I was. And as a result, and because I just wouldn't take no for an answer. And so what it ended up happening, they ended up trying to get rid of me, which in 1992, they said they weren't getting rid of me, but they were getting rid of me. You know, they were moving you to a back room in a closet where you couldn't do anything, you know. So at that point, thanks to my good friend Phil Folia, unfortunately, who passed away, the last position he served in was Deputy Inspector General for the state of New York. I went to federal court and I filed a civil rights complaint against the university. This was December 9th, 1992. I'm sitting outside the chambers of Judge Constance Baker Motley. Those of you who know anything about law know Motley was the one who carried the briefs for Thurgood Marshall, and she understood civil rights backwards and forwards. A black jurist, very, very competent. She looked at the papers very calmly, quietly, asked me a couple of questions when I went into the room, and then signed the order for TRO, temporary restraining order, against the university from removing me, but more importantly, telling the university that they had to stop discriminating against Italian Americans in hiring, promotion, and tenure. Hiring, promotion, and tenure. Well, this university still wasn't happy, and even with that ruling, they wouldn't back down. We ended up having a 3-week, what amounted to a trial, which was a hearing, but it was a trial, in which at one of the meetings, the chancellor at the time her initials were WAR, Ann Reynolds. She was a tough Southerner from the South, and she didn't want to hear about this. And she had to come. She was ordered to come to court. Was subpoenaed to come to court, and the state said, "Well, you know, she's too busy. She really can't come." Motley then very quietly under her breath says, "Well, if she's not here by tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'll send the marshals with monocles to bring her in." He was there the next morning. All right. Again, I didn't ingratiate myself in any way with them at all by doing any of this. And this isn't about me, but at the same time, gotta understand, I went through, this was a very trying period. And I thanks to my good friend Andre and others in the Italian American, especially Unico, who really stood up for us at that time, and others as well. You know, I mean, also John Calvelli, who is now chairman of the board of NIAF. You know, he helped tremendously. He got Elliot Engel to testify in court for me as well, who was the congressman at the time. So Mario Biaggi was in the courtroom every single day, watching what was going on, because Mario was a good friend and he understood. What he said to me when they tried to get rid of me, and like I said, demote me, but they said they weren't demoting me. They were sending me to Staten Island, and I live in Westchester. You can imagine what that would have been like. You would imagine what that would have been like. He said that, first of all, he says that as far as you're concerned, they're trying to get rid of you, but as far as the Italian Americans, they're trying to ghettoize us. Basically, put us all in the same place, because already Staten Island is known for having a lot of Italian American population. One thing I neglected to say before is when I took the position, I was allowed to go to any campus I wanted to go in the university. I chose the Graduate Center, which was in the heart of the university on 42nd Street. And the reason for that was I knew that from the center of the spoke of the wheel, you could get to all the outlying areas, and you could make a difference. And I did. I established the Italian American Faculty Association, the Italian American Student Association. We were on a roll, and they didn't like it. And they didn't like it one bit. So at that point, we go through the trial, we go through the hearings, and now she gives an injunction against the university for the same things. She says that you cannot hire them, that we haven't hired enough Italian Americans, so she's giving an injunction against them, barring them from discriminating again in hiring, promotion, and tenure, and she's going to monitor it. Well, this goes on for about 2 years. She awards us attorney's fees as well. And after 2 years, they finally, with the help of Mario Cuomo and his Secretary of State at that point, Drew Giambelli, they managed to come to a settlement agreement. The settlement agreement allows the institute to stay intact, in place, to continue to do the work it's supposed to do, to become a research and service institute. I write the papers for it. They get approved by the university the following year, and they're going to make a commitment to hire more Italian Americans. Well, you really can't sue your employer and expect to stick around forever. So I knew that I was going just up against it again. I mean, I had to go to court with them again another time, just to get my rights. I went to state. I had to sue them in state court also on my rights, and I won again. And but it was exhausting. I mean, exhausting, and all you were doing was you're spending your time in court instead of being able to do the work that you want to do. So at that point, I knew there was time for me to leave. So when they offered me the opportunity to go out on my terms, which was basically to be given a salary of a vice president and called a vice president, and develop what I had as my pet project, which was the Italian American Museum, I took it. They gave me 3 years full pay to work on the project. Now, most people get that deal and they go off for trips around the world and everything. I didn't do that. I took it seriously, and I developed the Institute. I had the program. I had 1999, as you know, I did the exhibition at the New York Historical Society on the Italians of New York. That's another story. I raised a lot of money for that too. I found out I could raise money besides just file lawsuits. And that was usually successful, and it led to me starting the museum and going off in that direction. But this was a fight that continues. And I'm sorry to say that although there's still data being collected on the numbers of Italian American faculty and staff at the university, the numbers haven't increased. The latest numbers that I saw were from 2 years ago, and the numbers are actually lower than they were. By the time I left, I had got it up to 6.5% from 5%. It's back down to 5% now. And there's no opportunity. And why is this important? People say, well, it's not such a great university. It doesn't cost anything compared to what it costs to go to these other universities. You're important for young people to get an education that's a good education. The faculty is excellent. You're spending $60,000, $70,000 in some of these private schools where you can get a college education at a CUNY school like Queens College or Brooklyn College or Baruch College, which are excellent for like a pittance, and save yourself a lot of heartache later on where you're paying off debt. So, for some people, so it makes no sense from the student's perspective, as far as I'm concerned, to go into that kind of debt unless you have rich parents that can afford to pay for it. And that's what some parents do. But it's just not worth it. Anyway, that's my story. It's the shorter end of it. It's not the longest part of it, but that's the story. And of course, I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Well,
so thank you for listening to me.
Amazing
Thank you.
story. Really.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so, Doc, candidly, you've been fighting this fight, but there's the fact that you showed the civil rights of Italian Americans, which, we talk about that all the time. When we talk about the attacks on Columbus and Columbus statues and Columbus Day, and when we see all this, these things that are going on about Italian Americans with stereotyping and so forth, you really kind of kicked it off on the legal side of it. In fact, the Italian American One Voice Coalition, we used your case as well as a number of other cases to prove that Italian Americans are a cognizable group under the 14th Amendment, and we're a recognized group under the 14th Amendment, and we're using that in our lawsuit for the statute, our federal lawsuit, and we cited your case as well, and that's why what Dr. Scelza went through all those years really laid a significant groundwork that we've been building on and we can continue to build on. So that's why it was important for all of us to hear this here. Unfortunately, this number of the Native Americans that were supposed to be on the call, they had something else that occurred tonight, so they wouldn't be on. But I wanted them to hear the story as well because they certainly have rights that have been allotted to them.
Well, their story's the same. Honestly, when you look at when you looked at the university, they gave lip service also to Native Americans as well. And
Right.
I mean, I have the data on that too. And they just some of the games that they play are like this. They do a weighing of where faculty members come from in the United States. And what CUNY and most universities claim is that they're national institutions. So they tend to take the national averages of how many there are in the country. What we were able to do, though, is we were able to show that not only geographically were we numerous in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, which is the applicant pool for the university, but also we were able to show that in the professions, and we are well above the averages, and yet we're not being represented at the university. This is what the judge saw, and this is what the judge realized, and she knew what it was all about because she had been there before with the African American community, so she knew that this was just a perfect parallel. There was no question about it. Any group can be discriminated against, and if whoever's in power, what they try when I was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal, they tried to get me to play one group against the other, and I wouldn't do that, because I knew that was a kiss of death if I did it. I would especially with all the journalists from primarily one ethnic group. So although the university had a proliferation of that group within it, I would never say it because it wasn't an overt thing. I mean, God knows they think of us. They think of us kindly, but don't think of us professionally. I would say that. So it's benign neglect at best. But the effect of it is that our students don't get the benefit of people that are capable of mentoring them and teaching them that they should have, and they do get it at other universities. It's more balanced than other places, but not at City University. And I'm sorry to say at most of the state institutions, because they tend to be more political and more. When I say political, all universities are political when it comes to hiring. Those of you who don't know the hiring process for professors, it's an old boys system. Not today. It's not only boys; it's also women. But it's faculty hires from their own department, and they do all the recruitment themselves. So it's a very incestuous type of an operation. It's not done on the basis of a merit or tests. It's done like it is in Europe actually. But it's done basically on who you know and who likes you. So what ends up happening is people end up hiring the people they know and the people they like, and that's what goes on over. It still goes on today. Hasn't changed, and it's not likely to change. Now this is not meant to be a political statement, but I will say that I just want to say that it's unfortunate that we're caught up into this process, and it's also unfortunate that so many of our fellow Italian American parents don't know or understand this, and so many of them just look to the PhD or the dean, and they think that they're like gods, and they're not. They're just human beings, and they're not above anything, and they certainly have their own prejudices that they certainly espouse all the time. So and they perpetuate it. It's a very, very difficult system. So I decided that I wanted to do something with my life, and I wanted to create something that I hope will last for a very, very long time. I'd like in perpetuity, but we'll just say for a long, long time, where we can really teach and tell our story ourselves. So after 1999, when I did the exhibit at the Historical Society, I realized that a museum and museums are something that we control. I did, while I was at Columbia, study other ethnic groups and how they worked, particularly the Black movement. And I never really understood till I studied at Columbia why there was a need for Black colleges. May not be much of a need for it as much today, but it's a good counterpoint, because Without those black colleges, they wouldn't have been able to arrive at the other colleges that they're at today. And that's a good thing. We don't have Italian colleges. I mean, I don't think we ever will. As a matter of fact, I'm sure we will never will. But we can have our own institutions. And if we can, and you must control your own. This is not malevolent. This is progressive. You want to control your own institutions so that they are fair. My doctorate's in pluralism. I am not unfair. I just want to make sure we have a seat at the table, and an appropriate seat. So that's why, as some of you know, I've offered to be the chair of the Museums and Cultural Institutions Committee for Copa Mile. And we have a number of groups that are actively either involved or in the stages of development or becoming involved in becoming museums, and whether they're 100% Italian American or they have some aspect of it. But the important thing is who controls those museums. Don't be impressed by the PhD. Please, although you need them, you need those credentials. Make sure that they really are not just a lot of fluff. Just because they have a lot of papers, numbers, letters after their name, or they have a lot of papers that they've produced, doesn't mean anything. It's their orientation that counts. You have to be very careful. I've seen all too often how good intentions, and some of them were by Unico too, I have to tell you, to hire professors that for Italian studies that then turn their backs on the Italian American community. And that's unfortunate. And I've warned them, they don't listen. One person who did listen was Joe Kocher. And I worked with him to establish the Kocher Institute. So he was smart enough to realize that.
Doc, we have a question, Tommy Giamagello. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Andre.
I'm a professor, I can talk forever.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, Andre, what federal case did you use springboarding off Joe's?
I've got. We actually have a brochure on it, Tommy. I'll send it out to anybody who wants it. It's Italian American One Voice Coalition Civil Rights brochure, where we quote a number of the cases that we've presented now at district court, the federal district court. I will send that to you.
Yeah. So are those active? Or are those cases you already had and concluded?
Well, those aren't our cases. They were precedent cases that recognized Italian Americans as a separate group.
Okay. So let me just throw something at you and Joe, and with the civil rights issue. Here's a simple example of in Boston, we lost Columbus Day because an executive order from a mayor that was temporary. They've kept Columbus Day off the books and replaced it with Indigenous Peoples Day. Now they want to have a parade next year, a Columbus Day parade. The mayor essentially said, no, you cannot have the parade by calling it Columbus Day. It has to be Italian Heritage Day. And otherwise you don't get any money from the city. Now, this is just hearsay, but the person who was talking to her said, well, I don't need your $5,000. And her comment was, are you a wise guy? Now, my whole point about this is that it just seems like an obvious situation of our freedom of speech, the civil rights that we have to call it whatever we want. Now, I'm just so frustrated with this whole situation that we have no power to say that our civil rights are being violated by saying we can't call something that's sponsored by Italian organizations and call it a Columbus Day parade, regardless of whatever the books say, whether it's a Columbus Day holiday that day or not.
Talk to George.
It just seems like something that it should be a simple solution here that just violates our freedom of speech, that I can't be told what I can call something.
Go ahead, Doc. You were saying something?
You're absolutely right, but talk to George Brucato. And he's been successful. He's right now I would say our sword, that he's been very successful in Philadelphia. And
I talk to George all the time, Joe. The thing I've said this before, is that we are all fighting individual little battles all over the country. And I know other organizations, they tend to have a national slush fund that would fight for us. And why we have never been organized federally or statewide
Well, if you study the civil rights movement, which
Yeah,
I studied,
we've never been able to collaborate and put our monies together because you know what always stops what we do in Boston? I can't get anybody to pay for lawyers.
well, nobody.
So, and that's always a big issue. But
That's a problem. That's a problem.
I know it's a problem, but imagine if we all, I know a bunch of people in this mosaic I have in front of me are fighting individual fights in their cities, and they're working very hard, but I don't know why we can't work together, create a national fund, and win some cases that become precedent that everyone can then build upon.
Well, that's
it sponsors something like this. This is one of, I think, our losing battles.
Tommy, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what the African American community did in the 1930s and 40s.
The Jewish people do it too.
No,
I mean,
but
it's probably every ethnic group out there.
What I'm saying, I almost bankrupted the law firm that was with me, and that's why I ended up settling instead of fighting on.
I know it's exhausting, Joe. Just like you said.
No, I listen. My Motley, thank God, my judge awarded attorney's fees to my counsel. You know, from the other side had to pay, but until they did, it was years later. You know, they were working for nothing basically for all that time, and unless you got really deep pockets, you can't afford to do that.
That's my
point. You need, and you're right. You need a fund to be able to do this, and you need to be strategic. None of us, and there may be some lawyers on this call. I'm not sure if there are or not, but you need to set up a fund to be able to do this, and then strategically, with a scalpel, build on cases one after another. Don't expect to get the first one and get the home run.
No, you
got to get on first base. You know, what Andre has done is put together a list of successful precedents that have been established, which is great.
Yeah.
But we need to have a plan and to cherry pick the cases. Unfortunately, you can't fight every one of them. You got to fight the ones you think you can win. And then you got to build on that one so that you now start a pool of it. It's going to take a lifetime to do, you know. And I didn't have another lifetime, so I would have done that otherwise. But
we don't have a lifetime on this call, so we're gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Martha, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Dr. Shelsa, very much. Fascinating history. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not a professor. I'm not a board member. I'm a human being, an Italian American who has a whole other career. But I've been hearing this story for years, my whole life. Italians as a group don't seem to get together. And of course, you've got the media. The media helps tremendously, obviously. The big groups that we always hear about are, and I'm not saying this in I'm not putting any group down by any means. African Americans, the Jews, the gays, and the Latinos, the Hispanics. Those are the four top groups that you constantly hear about. And good for them. Good for them. I'm not putting them down. What is it about Italian Americans that we just don't, with our own immediate families, we're good. We're good. We make sure that the immediate family is taken care of. But when it comes to organizing an entire group, we don't come across as victims like those other four groups do. Italian Americans, if you say something about being an Italian American, maybe what comes to somebody's mind is, the mafia, or, something, your name ends in a vowel, that kind of thing. But we don't come across as victims, and we don't have the press behind us. My dad was a state senator in Queens. He passed away in 1979. And until the day of his death, he said the same thing. And that was way back then. He said, Italians do not stick together. And I don't know why. I don't know what it takes for us to stick together as a group. But to be honest with you, I don't want to come across as a victim either. Because I'm not.
I wasn't suggesting that's how we fight. Fight for rights doesn't mean you're a victim.
Right.
I hate playing that victim card. I agree with you 100%.
Right.
Martha,
Yes.
There's a lot of historical reasons for this. I mean, I can go into the sociological reasons for Southern Italy and the Italian mentality that comes out of it. You're not wrong. I mean, you're right about your analysis, but you have on this call, I guess, about 20 people or more. You know, I haven't counted the numbers. These people, the people who are on this call are enough. It only took 12 people to start religion that's lasted 2,000 years. I mean, you've got enough people on this call to do exactly what you want to do. You know exactly what we want to do. You don't need to bring everybody across and forget about that. When I give you one just quick example. In 1979, I was preaching about why mental health counselors should be licensed in the United States. Only state that licensed us was Virginia at that time. I was giving a speech at Grossinger's in upstate New York, and one person got up and she started complaining. I says, well, you don't really need this. I said, well, you don't really need to be here. You got 100 people in this room that want it. You don't have to be here. Leave. I'm talking to the ones who want it. There are enough of us. There are enough of us now that understand this, Martha.
Yeah.
You know that we've been in America long enough that we understand that we have to stick together and we have to fight. And if we don't, we'll get nothing.
Right.
So I think the time has changed, actually.
Okay.
I think what's happened with Columbus has made us stronger, not weaker, actually. Because of all the conflict we've seen that we just can't just accept people to be nice to us. We have to do something about it. And the next step is, I mean, like Andre needs a war chest. He needs a war chest. There's no question about it. And he has to be very very careful how he uses it. But yeah, he needs a war chest to go after some of these cases. And unfortunately, a lot of them are terrible losses. But only go after the ones that you think you really have a chance of winning.
Yeah,
because
but Doc,
you need to go one after another.
But Doc, let me tell you that even among Italian Americans, I've had people call me up and say, "Hey, Andre, lighten up. It's not that bad."
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they don't realize the damage that this does. But I'm going to take one more question.
On to the next person, Andre.
We're going to go in. I'm going to take one more question, and we got a couple of pieces of business. I'm going to try to end the meeting as we normally do in an hour. Anthony Benjamin, you had your hand up?
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask Dr. Shelsa, you mentioned about the CUNY problem, about the low percentage of Italian American professors, et cetera, and faculty. Do you know the reason why, as opposed to New Jersey? Because you said there's other universities don't have the problem. I mean, it doesn't exist in New Jersey or Connecticut. It's just
it exists in New Jersey. It exists at the public colleges and university very badly.
Even in New Jersey.
Oh yeah, at the public.
Okay,
colleges.
no, that's my question was. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I mean, Rutgers is terrible.
So we're just going to go into a little bit more business. But Doc, I want to really thank you for coming on tonight. It was very enlightening. It's important to people to hear the history. You did this a long time ago, but it has far-reaching effects, and that's why I thought it was so good for you to be able to present this tonight. Also, when you talk about getting together, that's what we do on these calls. We are bridging the cultures between Italian Americans and actually Native Americans. And at our last call, if you remember, David Davidson, Eunice Davidson's husband, presented the new initiative about educating other Native Americans and Italian Americans about the way that both groups are subject to this real cancel culture and this denigration that occurs out there. So what Becky Anderson, excuse me, the new board member of NAGA, she started a private Facebook group, and we're asking people to join that private Facebook group for us to share things among each other. Now, some of you have already joined, but in order to get on that private Facebook group, you have to be invited by somebody that's on there. So I'm going to send an email out to everyone. I just want you to know that you could friend me or friend one of the others on the email if you're on Facebook, and then you'll be able to join that private Facebook group where we continue this discussion about David's initiative about educating other Native Americans and Italian Americans. So I'll send that out in an email to everybody that's on this call and everyone else. A couple of other pieces that we have in business. I know both Ed McLaughlin and Tony want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Syracuse. There's an update we heard from Tony before about Syracuse. So Ed and Tony and Nick, if you want to talk about that.
Nick, why don't you go ahead?
Tony, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to give me a quick update. We're well, I think the big thing that has us focused right now is that we have a new mayor coming in a few weeks, and she's very outspokenly against us and is intending to move towards taking the statue down. One of the things that what's happening is that we think that they've turned over really the appearance of this to the Historical Association in Onondaga County. And the Onondaga Historical Association has received a grant from the Mellon Foundation. The Mellon Foundation has something called the Monuments Project. Some of you may be familiar with it, but they are very clearly seeking to, change the landscape in the country. And so we're preparing for battle again, as many communities are, and we are seriously interested in looking closely at the possibility of a discrimination case as another strategy in our legal arsenal. So I don't have a lot of more details than that. Is there anything, Nick, may I left off? Or
Tony, give out our website if people want to follow us.
Well, ColumbusMonumentSyracuse.com.
Yeah,
All
Tony.
one word.
Tony, if I could
Syracuse.
just interject that our federal case, we exactly talk about the fact that the statue was taken down in West Orange, New Jersey, and that is discrimination against us on the 14th Amendment. And we won standing. Our case is still pending, but we did achieve standing, and they tried to throw it out 3 times already, and they haven't thrown it out yet. But there's a lot of argument in that case that might help you. So I'll speak with you about getting some. And also, don't forget your statue. Your statue has the Native American images on it as well. So maybe the letter that we have from NAGA,
that's right,
supporting Columbus will help you as well.
Right. And how much does the Philadelphia case, Anthony? How much does the Philadelphia case help you guys? You must know all about that.
Well, we're going to have a conversation with George Paquetto on that.
Please do. Yeah, you should.
Andre, in our case with the Italian American Defense League that was in the New York Federal Court, they said that we had an aesthetic interest in the statue. However, the point of having a property interest or a liberty interest, we did not prove. So now, if we decide to move the case, our best chance might be to move it to the Connecticut Supreme Court, where there is historical district protection of the statue in that district, where it's a little more open to having that cultural interest in the statue. But if you look at our case, they did say we have an aesthetic interest in the statue, that by removing the statue, it changed the aesthetics of the historic district, which created an interest. So you might want to take a look at our case. One thing that we were never able to prove is discrimination.
Yeah, that's going to be challenging to do that. I think to follow up with what Tommy was talking about earlier, and one of the things that might be helpful is all the communities are, I guess, doing their own thing, because the legal arguments are a little different everywhere, right? And different communities, different states, different laws sometimes. But I think that this coalition of people that are committed to this is a good start, a good idea, in the sense that there should be a legal roundtable to really talk through these issues that different communities are, and maybe the attorneys and the teams are independent of one another, but there needs to be a good network of discussion over what is working in some courts and what's not working in other courts. Okay,
right.
I think that's a good start.
Anthony, we need a clearinghouse of that type of talent to put together.
Yeah.
So if these different cases come, you look at them
Yeah.
with your legal minds and all the precedents and examples that are already happening, and you say, wow, this case is our best shot to maybe create something that can be used nationally as a precedent that really has a win sense to it. That's what we're,
And that's what
that
George is
coordination
looking
is
for,
what,
because
Anthony, we need. Yeah. And it could be with
George
this
is
book
looking
right
for
here.
that case because he wants to take it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
He's looking for that case. We're going to keep looking for opportunities like that. Well, we're talking with our attorneys, and as I said, we're going to be talking with George maybe next week. But we're going to keep pushing in this direction. And Andre, is the Italian One Voice Coalition is the plaintiff in that case?
Yes.
I want to learn more about that too.
Yeah,
Okay.
we actually, when we did that, we actually put together a volunteer legal study group comprised of 7 attorneys.
There you go.
That's where we got all the research about the previous cases where they said that Columbus is recognized by Italian Americans and that Italian Americans are a cognizable group under the 14th. So we have all that legal stuff that was put together by our volunteer attorneys. And we have a constitutional attorney that is representing us in the federal court. And we will continue it even if we have to go to the Supreme Court. So we believe that we've got some very good issues in that case that we put forward.
And good news,
Right.
good news is that on the National Park Foundation calendar and on the calendar for Central Park, Columbus Day has been put back.
Yay.
And I think, when they came out last year without Columbus Day on it and just the Indigenous Peoples Day, I wrote a letter, not that my letter mattered, but maybe others did.
Oh, man.
And so
Good.
it is, so all those little things like that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Good.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Just one update. In our organization, we put together what's called the One Voice Minute, which is a 1-minute video about important things for Italian Americans, and we've produced a bunch of them. Frank Cipolla, who's on our board, is the executive director. As you know, he was a news anchor for many years on a number of stations in this area, in the New York area, and also on the Wall Street Journal Report. So he's the executive producer, and we have these One Voice Minutes. We have a new set of 6 of them that are coming out that we just produced, and one of them is on our relationship with NAGA, with the Native American Guardian Association. So that one will be coming out shortly. I'll certainly let everybody know when that's on our YouTube page and promoting that. So at this point, we're coming right up at the 1 hour, and I try to keep to the IBM rule. So I appreciate everybody being on, especially this couple of days before Thanksgiving. I hope everybody has a very nice Thanksgiving,
Same
healthy
here.
with your families, and enjoy it. And certainly appreciate everybody being on. And Dr. Shelza, thanks again for being on tonight.
Yes. Thank you. Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanksgiving.
Care.
Thank you. God bless
Thanksgiving.
you.
Night.
Ciao, ciao.
Night.